Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. As Commander Jason Wood stood silently, the vast expanse of the galaxy stretched out before him, a reminder of how far humanity had come, and how little they were understood by the beings who governed the stars. His mission, though seemingly a simple diplomatic duty, had already taken a turn he hadn't anticipated. He had entered this assignment expecting only the role of protector to the Queen's proxy, a mere extension of royal duty. Yet, every step he took on this journey began to unravel the truth about the fragile peace humanity had forged with the Tan Dominion and the implications it held. In the quiet corridors of the Tan Dominion's embassy on Earth, Jason's thoughts swirled with the weight of his assignment. The proxy, Lira, was not merely a clone of the Queen, as he had first assumed. She had her own thoughts, desires, and a personality that was beginning to break through the cold, mechanical nature of her creation. He couldn't help but feel drawn to her, though he knew the risks of such feelings. His duty was clear: protect, serve, and remain professional. Yet as he walked beside her through the embassy's halls, he felt the subtle shifts in the air between them, a tension that grew with each passing moment. Lira, ever the composed and calculated royal proxy, seemed to sense his unease, and her voice, soft and melodic, broke the silence. "Commander, you seem troubled," she remarked, her crimson eyes locking onto his with an intensity that startled him. Jason cleared his throat and straightened his posture. "It's nothing, just thinking about the mission ahead." Lira studied him for a moment, her gaze lingering, before a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "You are human. I would expect no less." Her words, though gentle, carried an undercurrent of something deeper, something Jason couldn't quite place. They arrived at the diplomatic briefing room, and Jason's attention snapped. Back to the matter at hand. The room was spacious, adorned with tapestries and artifacts from various worlds, all a testament to the Tan Dominion's power. As the delegates filed in, Jason stood silently by the door, his presence a reminder of the fragile peace between Earth and the Dominion. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Earth's diplomats, eager to negotiate new trade agreements, exchanged cautious glances, while the Tan officials exuded an air of superiority that could only come from centuries of dominance. Queen Nasara, though not physically present, loomed large in the room through her proxy, Lira. The discussions began, and Jason's mind drifted once more. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Dominion had been manipulating the terms of the agreement, and though they presented themselves as partners, Jason knew there was an underlying motive. As the meeting continued, Lira remained poised and unflinching, her eyes scanning the room with a cool detachment. Jason, however, could sense the subtle shift in her demeanor as she caught the gaze of one of the Tan officials. There was something in the way she carried herself, something that wasn't just about her role as the Queen's representative. It was as if she was playing a game, one that Jason was only beginning to understand. After the meeting, Jason and Lira returned to the private quarters of the embassy. The walls, adorned with alien artwork, seemed to close in on him as the silence stretched between them. Lira spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "Commander, I know what you're thinking," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "You think I'm just a copy of the Queen. But I am more than that. I am not just her servant, I am her equal in ways that the Dominion would never acknowledge." Jason's heart skipped a beat. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Lira wasn't just the Queen's proxy, she had been created with the same memories, the same intelligence, and the same power as the Queen. But there was something else. A spark of individuality, a desire for freedom that Jason hadn't seen in her before. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lira took a step closer, her presence overwhelming yet somehow comforting. "I am telling you that the Dominion has made a grave mistake. They think they control me, but they don't. I am not just a pawn in their game. I have the power to change things. And I need your help. Jason's mind raced. He had known that humanity's relationship with the Dominion was fragile, but he had never anticipated being thrust into a conflict that involved the Queen's very proxy. As the weight of Lira's words sank in, he realized that his duty had just become far more complicated. No longer was he just a protector, he was a key player in a game of political intrigue that spanned the stars. "What do you need from me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm of thought swirling in his mind. Lira smiled, the warmth of her expression sending a chill down his spine. "I need you to help me escape. The Dominion will stop at nothing to keep me under their control. But together, we can change that. Together, we can give humanity a voice in the galaxy, one they cannot ignore." The path ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and betrayal. But in that moment, Jason knew that the real battle was just beginning. And he, along with Lira, would have to fight not just for survival, but for the future of humanity itself. The weight of Lira's words hung in the air between them, a promise of revolution that Jason wasn't sure he was ready to embrace. He had signed up to protect her, to be a silent bodyguard, nothing more. But now, as he stood in the dimly lit corridor of the embassy, he realized that his life was about to change forever. "You have no idea what you're asking," Jason said, his voice a low murmur as he tried to make sense of everything. Lira's eyes, the same piercing blue as Queen Nisara's, held a steady gaze, her expression unreadable. "I know exactly what I'm asking," she replied softly. "The Dominion cannot continue to rule over us with their lies and manipulation. We have the power to change that, but only if you help me. Together, we can turn the tide." Jason shook his head, still grappling with the enormity of the situation. He had seen the way the Dominion operated, their ruthless pursuit of power and control. He knew that any misstep could lead to disaster. "How do you expect me to help you?" he asked, his words heavy with doubt. Lira stepped closer, her presence both commanding and calming. "You've been trained for combat, for strategy. You know how to navigate conflict. What I need from you now is not just your strength, but your trust. You must believe in me, in what we can achieve together." Jason looked at her, studying the subtle determination in her eyes. There was no mistaking the seriousness of her words, no doubting the fire that burned within her. Despite her origins as the Queen's proxy, she was not just a tool to be controlled, she was a force in her own right, a force that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Jason's mind raced. He had always believed that his duty was to protect, to follow orders. But what Lira was asking wasn't just about protection, it was about action, about defiance. It was about standing up to a system that had long considered humanity a mere pawn. "I still don't see how this works," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "If we go against the Dominion, they'll destroy us. They'll make an example of you or of both of us." Lira's gaze softened, her voice a quiet whisper. "The Dominion has already underestimated us. They think they can control humanity, that they can manipulate us with their politics and their power. But they've never faced what we're capable of. They've never seen what happens when humanity stands united, when we fight for something greater than ourselves." Her words struck a chord in Jason's heart, the same heart that had fought countless battles in defense of Earth. He had always known that humanity was more than the sum of its parts, that they could overcome any obstacle if they stood together. And now, standing before Lira, he could see the truth in her eyes. This wasn't just about one woman's fight for freedom, it was about humanity's place in the galaxy. Lira's hand reached out, brushing lightly against his arm, and for a moment, Jason forgot the war that raged in the stars. All he could think of was the quiet strength in her touch, the warmth that spread through him at the simple gesture. "Help me, Jason," Lira said again, her voice tinged with a quiet plea. "Help me show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." Jason stood still for a long moment, weighing the risks, the consequences. He had always been a soldier, a man of action, but this was something different. It wasn't just about fighting an enemy, it was about changing the entire narrative, about proving that humanity was more than just a footnote in the Dominion's empire. Finally, he nodded. "I'm with you," he said, the words feeling more like a vow than a promise. "Whatever it takes." Lyra's eyes brightened, a flicker of hope igniting within them. "Then we begin now," she replied, her voice steady and resolute. "Tonight, we send a message." The plan they had formed was risky, dangerous even, but Jason knew that it was their only chance. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. The Dominion had already begun to tighten its grip on the galaxy, and the longer they stayed silent, the harder it would be to break free. As Jason and Lira prepared to take the first step toward their mission, the tension in the air was palpable. This would not be easy. They would face obstacles, threats, and enemies that would stop at nothing to crush their rebellion. But Jason had never been one to back down from a fight. And this time, it wasn't just his life on the line, it was the future of humanity. As they moved out into the night, their every step felt like a declaration of war, a war not just against the Dominion, but against a galaxy that had forgotten the strength of the human spirit. Jason didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt that something greater than him was at play, and that made all the difference. Together, they would show the galaxy that humanity would never be silenced, that they would never bow to anyone again. As Jason and Lira moved through the shadows of the Tan Dominion embassy, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on them. The silence of the night seemed to stretch endlessly, mirroring the tension that gripped the air around them. They had made the decision, no turning back now. This would be the first strike in what would surely be a war that spanned across the stars. Every step they took felt like it was bringing them closer to the inevitable clash, not just against the Dominion, but against the very order of the galaxy itself. Lyra's steady presence beside him reminded Jason that this wasn't just a battle of strength, it was a battle of will, of ideals, and most importantly, of humanity's right to stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. The plan was simple in theory but would require precision and trust. The Dominion had made the mistake of believing they could control Lira, of thinking she was nothing more than a tool for their political games. But Jason knew better. Lira wasn't just a proxy, she was a spark, a symbol of defiance, and she had the power to ignite a revolution. As they reached the communication hub, the heart of the embassy's secure operations, Lira turned to Jason. "This is where we make our stand," she said, her voice a mixture of resolve and quiet determination. Jason nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do we need to do?" Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw something in them, a flicker of vulnerability, quickly masked by the cold, calculated determination she had worn since their first meeting. "We're going to broadcast a message," she said. "A message to the entire galaxy, to the Dominion, to Earth, to everyone. We're going to show them that humanity will no longer be silenced, that we are not their puppets to control. It will change everything." The gravity of her word settled over Jason, and for the first time, he understood what Lira meant. This wasn't just about overthrowing the Dominion or fighting for her freedom, this was about giving humanity a voice in the galaxy, a voice that had been stifled for far too long. The Tan Dominion had underestimated them, but Jason knew that the moment they broadcast that message, the galaxy would have no choice but to listen. "Let's do it," Jason said, his voice steady, his resolve hardening. They entered the communications room, the hum of the complex's systems filling the space around them. Lira quickly moved to the control panel, her fingers flying across the keys as she initiated the sequence. Jason kept watch, his senses alert to every noise, every movement. The stakes were too high for them to fail. Lyra's voice broke the silence as the transmission began to send. "This is Lira, proxy of the Tan Dominion," she began, her voice calm but firm, echoing through the silent room. "To the Dominion, to Earth, to every being who has ever believed they could control us, this message is for you. Humanity is no longer content to sit in the shadows, obeying the will of those who believe themselves to be superior. We are not pawns in your game. We are not to be manipulated or controlled. From this moment on, humanity stands united, stronger than ever before. We will no longer be silenced. We will rise. The time of subjugation is over. The galaxy will know our strength. The galaxy will know what happens when humanity fights back." Jason's breath caught as he listened to Lyra's words, the power in them sending a chill down his spine. This wasn't just a declaration of war, it was a rallying cry, a call to action. As the transmission continued, Jason felt the weight of what they were about to do. This wasn't just about them anymore, it was about every person who had ever been oppressed, every voice that had been stifled. The Dominion's grip on the galaxy was slipping, and they were the ones causing it to fall apart. The transmission finished, the room falling into a deafening silence. Jason looked at Lira, her expression unreadable as she took in the magnitude of their actions. "It's done," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now, we wait." As they left the communications room, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. They had crossed a line, and there would be no going back. The message had been sent, and now it was up to the galaxy to respond. Would they embrace humanity as equals, or would they fight to maintain their control? Jason didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain, this was only the beginning. As they moved deeper into the embassy, Jason could feel the tension building. The Dominion would soon know what had happened, and they would not take this lightly. But Jason was ready. He had pledged his loyalty to Lira, to humanity, and now he would fight to ensure that they would no longer be silent. As the sound of approaching footsteps echoed in the hallway, Jason knew that the time for waiting was over. The galaxy was about to change, and he was ready to be a part of that change. The calm that followed the broadcast was short-lived. Jason could feel the storm brewing. The silence that had settled over. The embassy now felt like the calm before the storm. He and Lira had just made history, but they both knew that the Dominion would not sit idle. Their actions would have consequences, and those consequences would come swiftly. As they moved through the dimly lit corridors of the embassy, Jason kept his senses sharp, every noise, every flicker of light in the distance making him alert. The plan they had set in motion was risky, but there was no turning back now. Lira had already done what she needed to do, she had made her declaration, sent her message to the galaxy. Now, they would face the consequences. "They're going to come for us," Jason said, his voice low but filled with certainty. Lira nodded, her expression calm, though Jason could see the flicker of determination in her eyes. "They have to. This will change everything. They'll come after us first, to silence us, to make an example. But once we're gone, the message will spread. The rest of humanity will rise." Jason glanced at her, impressed by the clarity in her voice, the strength in her conviction. Lira was no longer just the Queen's proxy. She was a leader in her own right, and the fire in her eyes reminded him of the reason he had joined this fight in the first place. Humanity's voice, once silenced, was now being heard. The door to the command center hissed open, and they stepped into the heart of the embassy. Jason immediately went to work, securing the room and ensuring they weren't being watched. He had learned enough about the Dominion surveillance systems to know they would be watching closely. Lira, meanwhile, moved to the console, her fingers flying over the interface as she checked the status of their message. "It's out there," she said, her voice steady. "Now, we wait." The tension in the room was palpable. Jason could feel it in his chest, like a pressure building with every passing second. The message had been sent, but the response would come soon. He knew the Dominion would not tolerate this kind of defiance. The Tan Dominion had long believed that they controlled the fate of every species they encountered, manipulating them into submission with promises of power and protection. But humanity was different. They had proven time and again that they could not be easily controlled. And now, with Lira's broadcast, they had drawn a line in the sand. Jason's mind raced. He had fought in countless battles, faced down enemies both human and alien, but nothing had prepared him for this. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. They were not just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of humanity, for their place in the galaxy. "Do you think they'll retaliate immediately?" Jason asked, his voice tense with anticipation. Lira looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "They will. And they'll do it with everything they have. But they will make a mistake. They think we're weak, that we're divided. They underestimate the strength of a united humanity." Jason felt a spark of hope flare inside him. He had always believed in humanity's potential, in their ability to overcome any obstacle. But this was different. The Dominion was no small enemy, and they would not go down easily. Yet Lira's words rang true. The Dominion had underestimated them before. And now, they would see just how wrong they were. The door to the command center slid open again, and Jason immediately tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. But it was only a messenger, a Tan officer who had been part of their earlier meetings. He entered the room without hesitation, his expression unreadable. "The Dominion has issued a response," he said, his voice cold and detached. "They demand the immediate cessation of your actions and the return of the proxy to their custody." Jason felt a surge of anger, but he kept his expression neutral. "Of course they would," he muttered. "What else would they say?" Lira stood tall, her posture regal as she faced the officer. "Tell them," she said, her voice calm but filled with power, "that humanity will no longer be silenced. We stand united, and we will not bow to threats or intimidation. The galaxy will hear our voice, whether they like it or not." The officer blinked, clearly taken aback by her defiance. He hesitated for a moment, but then nodded curtly. "I will deliver your message," he said, turning to leave. As the door closed behind him, Jason felt the weight of the moment settle over him. This was it, the point of no return. They had made their stand, and now the Dominion would respond. Whatever happened next, they had set the wheels in motion. The galaxy would know humanity was not to be ignored. "Are you ready?" Jason asked, turning to Lira. She smiled, a small but fierce smile, and nodded. "I've been ready my entire life." Jason nodded, his heart steady as he prepared for what was to come. The war was just beginning, but for the first time, humanity had a chance to shape its own future. The Dominion's reign would not go unchallenged. And with Lira by his side, Jason knew that humanity's voice would never again be silenced. The tension in the room was suffocating as Jason and Lira stood side by side, waiting for the Dominion's response. The silence seemed to stretch on forever, each passing second more unbearable than the last. The message had been sent, and now the galaxy was watching, waiting to see if humanity would rise or fall. Jason's thoughts were a whirlwind, each one filled with uncertainty. He had fought on countless battlefields, faced down threats from every corner of the galaxy, but this was different. This was a war not fought with guns and bombs, but with ideas, with voices. It was a war for humanity's place in the galaxy. And it had begun with a single broadcast. As the moments dragged on, the door to the command center opened once again. This time, it wasn't just a messenger, this was the Dominion's answer. A group of Tan Dominion officials entered, their red skin glowing under the harsh lights of the room. They moved with an air of authority, their presence commanding attention. Jason's hand instinctively hovered over his side arm, but Lira stood tall, unflinching, her eyes locked on the leader of the delegation. "Commander Wood, Proxy Lira," the lead official began, his voice cold and calculated, "the Dominion has received your message. It is not well received." Jason could feel the weight of those words, the tension crackling in the air. This was no longer just a diplomatic discussion, this was a confrontation, a battle of wills. Lira's expression remained calm, but Jason could see the fire burning in her eyes. She was ready for this moment, ready to face the consequences of their actions. "We knew this would happen," Lira replied, her voice steady and filled with authority. "The Dominion believes it can control us, but we will not bow to your demands. Humanity will not be silenced any longer." The official's eyes narrowed as he studied her, clearly displeased by her defiance. "You are a mere proxy," he spat, his voice laced with venom. "You were never meant to have a voice, let alone one that speaks against the Dominion. Your broadcast was a grave mistake, and the Dominion will not let it stand." Jason stepped forward, his body tense with anger. "You underestimate us," he said, his voice low but firm. "You think you can intimidate us with threats, with your so-called power, but we've had enough. Humanity won't be controlled any longer. We've proven we can fight back, and we'll keep fighting until the galaxy knows the truth." The room fell into a heavy silence, the only sound the soft hum of the embassy's systems. The Dominion officials exchanged uneasy glances, their faces betraying a hint of uncertainty. They had expected resistance, but not this level of defiance, not from humanity. "You are making a dangerous mistake," the official said, his voice hardening. "The Dominion will not tolerate rebellion. You will be crushed, and your message will be erased." Lira's eyes flared with determination as she took a step closer to the official. "You can try to crush us," she said, her voice unwavering, "but you will fail. The more you push us, the stronger we become. The galaxy is watching, and humanity will not back down." Jason's heart raced as he looked at Lira, seeing the strength in her that he had come to admire. She wasn't just a leader, she was the symbol of everything humanity stood for. And together, they would fight for the future of their people. The official's expression twisted in anger as he turned on his heel, signaling his delegation to leave. "This is not over," he muttered under his breath as he exited the room, his words filled with menace. Jason and Lira stood in the silence that followed, the weight of the moment settling over them. They had just made their stand, and now the Dominion had declared war. But Jason wasn't afraid. He had seen the power of humanity before, he had seen how they could rise against impossible odds. And with Lira by his side, he knew they could do it again. "We've made our move," Lira said, her voice calm but resolute. "Now, we wait. The galaxy will have to choose. Will they stand with us, or will they fall to the Dominion?" Jason nodded, his gaze fixed on her. "They'll stand with us. Humanity won't be denied." The door to the command center closed behind them as they made their way out into the night. The first wave of the war had begun, and there would be no turning back. They were ready, and they would fight, not just for themselves, but for the future of humanity. As they moved through the darkened halls, Jason could feel the weight of the galaxy on their shoulders. The Dominion had no idea what they were up against. And soon, they would learn just how powerful humanity truly was. As the door to the command center closed behind them, Jason and Lira felt the weight of their actions settle heavily on their shoulders. The tension was palpable, thick in the air, as the reality of their declaration set in. They had made their stand, but the Dominion's response had been swift and harsh. The war had begun. Jason's mind raced with the possibilities. He had expected resistance, but nothing of this magnitude. The Dominion was powerful, far more so than any enemy he had ever faced. And yet, in the midst of it all, he couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Humanity had shown that they could stand up against the most oppressive forces. It was something he had always believed, but now, seeing it unfold before his eyes, he understood the true strength of his people. "They're not backing down," Jason muttered under his breath, his eyes scanning the darkened halls as they moved quickly through the embassy. "Neither are we," Lira replied, her voice steady, unwavering. "This is only the beginning. We've taken the first step, and now we must prepare for what's to come." They reached the safe room, a small, secure space deep within the embassy's underground chambers, designed for moments like this. Jason immediately went to the control panel, checking the communications network for any signs of incoming threats. The Dominion would be tracking them, looking for any opportunity to strike back. Lira stood beside him, her expression calm but resolute, as she reviewed the data coming in from their various outposts. "We need to move quickly," she said. "The Dominion will retaliate, and when they do, they'll come after us with everything they have. We must be ready." Jason nodded, his thoughts focused on the task at hand. "We have allies," he said. "Humans in the outer colonies, in the rebel fleets, they're waiting for a sign. Once they see our message, once they know we're serious, they'll rise up." Lira's eyes gleamed with a quiet fire. "The time for silence is over. Humanity will rise, and the Dominion won't know what hit them." As they prepared for the next phase of their plan, Jason felt the tension in his body slowly release. They had made their stand, and now the galaxy would have to choose. Would they stand with humanity, or would they fall to the Dominion's will? In the midst of it all, Jason had no doubts. Humanity would stand. As the days passed, Jason and Lira continued to strategize, preparing for the inevitable confrontation with the Dominion. Their network of supporters had begun to grow, quietly, in the shadows, as whispers of their defiance spread across the galaxy. The Dominion's response was swift and brutal, sending shockwaves through the political landscape. The first wave of retaliation came in the form of a fleet of warships, their engines roaring as they crossed into human space, aiming to make a statement. Jason watched the news feeds, his heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. The Dominion wasn't just threatening them, they were sending a message to the galaxy that rebellion would not be tolerated. But as the fleet entered human space, something unexpected happened. A message flashed across the communication network, an encrypted transmission from one of their allies in the outer colonies. The message was simple, direct: "We stand with you." It was a small gesture, but it was enough to ignite a spark of hope. Jason looked at Lira, his eyes filled with determination. "This is it," he said. "The galaxy is watching. The Dominion can't silence us anymore." Lyra's gaze softened, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Humanity has always been underestimated," she said. "But we will show them that we are stronger than they ever imagined." With renewed purpose, Jason and Lira set their plan into motion. They would not just fight the Dominion, they would make sure the galaxy knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The first battle was looming, and Jason knew that it would set the tone for everything that followed. But as he looked at Lira, he knew that no matter what came next, they had already won. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not afraid to fight for its future. And now, the Dominion would learn just how powerful they truly were. The days that followed were filled with tension, the kind that weighed on every breath, every movement. Jason could feel it in his bones as the first wave of the Dominion's retaliation approached. The fleet they had sent into human space was massive, overwhelming, and Jason knew that this would be their true test. As they gathered in the command center, the mood was quiet, but determined. Jason stood beside Lira, his eyes scanning the screens as the countdown to the battle began. The Dominion had come for them, but they were not alone. The galaxy had begun to take notice. Whispers of rebellion were spreading across the outer colonies, and slowly but surely, humanity's allies were rising. "This is it," Lira said, her voice calm but heavy with purpose. "They think they can crush us with force, but they have no idea what we're capable of." Jason turned to her, the fire in her eyes reflecting the same determination he felt. "We've prepared for this," he said. "We have the support we need. They won't break us." The tension was thick as the first ships of the Dominion fleet appeared on their scanners. The distance between them and Earth was closing fast, and Jason could see the enemy ships arrayed in a line, their weaponry ready to strike. He felt the weight of every decision they had made, every risk they had taken, pressing down on him. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for the soul of humanity. "They're closing in," Jason said, his voice tight with anticipation. "How long do we have?" Lyra's fingers flew over the controls, her eyes scanning the data. "We've got 2 hours, maybe less. But we're ready. We have the firepower to hold them off." The plan was simple: humanity's forces, though smaller in number, had the advantage of surprise. The Dominion had expected to easily crush the rebellion, but they hadn't anticipated how much humanity could achieve when they worked together. With the help of their allies, Jason and Lira had devised a counterattack that would buy them time for the rest of humanity to join the fight. "It's all or nothing now," Jason said, his heart pounding in his chest. Lira looked at him, her expression softening for just a moment. "We've already made history, Jason. Whatever happens, we've already shown the galaxy that humanity will never be silent again." As the countdown reached its final seconds, the command center erupted into action. The fleet's defense systems powered up, and the crew members moved quickly to their positions. Jason felt a rush of adrenaline, his focus sharpening as he prepared for the battle ahead. He had fought in wars before, but this was different. This wasn't just about victory or defeat, this was about ensuring that humanity's voice would be heard across the stars. The first shots were fired just as the enemy fleet entered the engagement zone. The explosion of energy rippled through space, the sound of battle deafening in the silence of the void. Jason's hands gripped the control panel as he watched the screens, tracking the movements of the Dominion ships. They were well coordinated, their superior numbers giving them an edge, but humanity's fleet had something the Dominion didn't: heart. The battle raged on for hours, the tide shifting back and forth. Jason's pulse quickened as he watched his fleet's ships dodge the enemy's attacks, firing back with precision. Every strike, every maneuver, every sacrifice they made was a testament to the strength of humanity's resolve. The Dominion wasn't prepared for this fight. They hadn't expected the sheer willpower that humanity could bring to the battlefield. As the battle reached its peak, a new wave of ships arrived, human reinforcements, led by the rebel fleets. The Dominion ships faltered, caught off guard by the sheer number of ships that had rallied to humanity's cause. Jason could see the shift happening in real time. The Dominion was losing ground. "We're doing it," Jason whispered, a sense of disbelief filling him. Lira's hand rested on his shoulder, a proud smile on her face. This is what happens when humanity stands together. With the new reinforcements pushing the Dominion's forces back, the balance of the battle had completely shifted. The enemy, once confident in their superiority, was now fighting to maintain their position. Jason watched as one of the Dominion's flagship ships, a massive dreadnought, took a hit from a direct strike. It began to list to the side, smoke rising from its engines. The battle was turning in humanity's favor. As the final minutes of the battle ticked down, Jason knew they had secured a hard-fought victory. The Dominion was forced to retreat, their ships scattering as humanity's forces closed in for the final strike. Jason exhaled, the tension in his body slowly unwinding as the command center erupted into cheers. They had won. But even in the victory, Jason knew the fight wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The Dominion had learned a valuable lesson today: they had underestimated humanity, and they would never make that mistake again. But for now, Jason allowed himself a moment of relief. They had fought with everything they had, and they had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As the screens flickered and the victory celebrations began, Lira turned to Jason, her eyes filled with a quiet pride. "This is just the first step, Jason. The galaxy will never forget what we've done today." Jason nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "We've shown them what humanity is capable of. And now, we'll make sure the galaxy knows our name." The victory was hard-earned, but it was only the beginning. As Jason and Lira stood amidst the aftermath of the battle, the vastness of what they had just accomplished began to settle in. The Dominion had been forced to retreat, but Jason knew that they would not give up so easily. The war was not over, but humanity had taken its first step toward securing a future where they would no longer be silenced. "We've shown them that we're not to be underestimated," Lira said, her voice steady as she watched the last of the Dominion ships retreating into the distance. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy is watching, and we've set something in motion that can't be undone." Jason nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. He had always believed in humanity's potential, but today, they had proven something far greater than strength. They had proven that they would fight for what was right, no matter the cost. The moment they had broadcast their message, everything had changed. The first wave of the rebellion had been successful, but they knew the Dominion would regroup and come back stronger. "What's next?" Jason asked, turning to Lira. She smiled, a determined look in her eyes. "We make sure the galaxy knows that humanity won't be silenced again. We keep pushing forward, building alliances, and preparing for the next fight. The Dominion may have thought they controlled everything, but now they know the truth: humanity is a force to be reckoned with." Jason's chest swelled with pride as he looked at Lira, seeing the leader she had become. She was no longer just the Queen's proxy, she was the face of the rebellion, the symbol of humanity's resilience. He had fought by her side, and he would continue to fight, not just for their survival, but for a future where humanity could stand tall among the stars. The journey ahead would be difficult, the battles ahead uncertain, but for the first time, Jason felt a deep sense of hope. They had sparked something, and the fire of that rebellion was spreading. It wouldn't be long before the galaxy would know that humanity was not just surviving, they were thriving, and they would fight to ensure their place in the universe. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore," Jason said, his voice filled with conviction. "We're fighting for everyone who has been oppressed, for everyone who has been told that they don't matter. This is about the future of humanity, about showing the galaxy that we deserve to be heard." Lira's eyes softened as she placed a hand on his shoulder. "And we will be heard, Jason. This is only the beginning. We've ignited a spark, and now, we'll watch as it grows into a flame that will burn across the stars." As they looked out at the stars, Jason felt the weight of their mission, but he also felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had taken its first step toward freedom, and though the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, Jason knew that they were ready. The Dominion had made their mistake, and now, the galaxy would never forget what humanity was capable of. "Let's make sure they remember," Jason said, his voice steady. "Let's make sure the galaxy knows that humanity will never back down." Lira nodded, a fierce smile on her face. "We will. And we'll make sure that no matter what happens, humanity's voice will never again be silenced." With that, they turned away from the command center, ready for whatever came next. They had already proven that humanity could rise, and now, they would show the galaxy that they could not be stopped. The battle for their future had just begun, and Jason and Lira were ready to lead humanity into a new era. Together, they would make sure that the galaxy knew humanity's name, and they would never again be forced to stand in the shadows.